Hello, it's me here to talk about the Switch 2 or, my thoughts on the Switch 2. At this point, I think everybody has made their piece on the Switch 2, talking about the price, talking about the reveal, talking about the ungodly tariffs, people talking about the canceled pre-orders, people talking about how the prices are absolutely insane in Europe. There's the fact that a lot of people are defending Nintendo as if they are incapable of wrongdoing. People are hating on Nintendo, thinking that Nintendo is responsible for every, evil in the world. Things like the Black Plague, the Holocaust, the current war in Gaza. Basically anything a Nintendo Switch 2 hater can say Nintendo is capable of, they'll blame it on Nintendo. Even though it's mostly overblown and the discourse is really toxic. But then again, it's also the Twitterification of discourse. It's the Twitterification of the conversation about the Switch 2, right? Where you're going to have one person make their take, and there's always going to be somebody who's going to have to take a contrarian position on it, where they have a strong reaction to whatever you're saying, and then that goes a stronger reaction. And again, it's the Twitterification of Switch 2 discourse, and everything is Twitterified these days thanks to the modern internet, but I'm not going to dwell on that for too long. So the Switch 2. So to change things up from other Switch 2 videos, I'm currently using footage of Penn Central at its finest, largely because I don't want to use the same stock footage that everybody else is, because I'm frankly kind of sick of it. So you're going to see some trains derail and do stuff that trains shouldn't be doing. So you're going to see lots of that. So the Switch 2. The price for the model for the console itself is $450, which me and a lot of my friends think it's reasonable. Getting essentially a slightly toned down PlayStation 5 and a portable form factor. I think $450 is a reasonable price. Sure, it's a little high. It's higher than what people would have wanted, but considering that the economy has never been the same since COVID, and the fact that inflation has just been a thing, I get it. I get it. Like, a lot of people complain about the Switch 2 price being $50 higher than what they have wanted, but $450 isn't bad. It isn't awful. In fact, I prepared for high prices just in case, because I started saving up for the Switch 2 around last October, where I started allocating money, money I save up from my lunch stipend at work, saving up money from Christmas and birthdays, just preparing for the Switch 2 just in case something like this happened. Of course, I nearly goddamn lost my mind when the Liberation Day tariffs were announced, most of the really high ones being placed on countries that are involved in the manufacturing of the Switch 2, which honestly resulted in one of the worst weeks I've ever had. Like, the stress was unreal, the reactionaryism was unparalleled. I made 2 memes, one of which lost me like 3 subscribers, and man, oh man, I just wasn't having a fun time with this, But then the tariffs were reversed for 90 days, and largely things have quieted down a lot. So I'm just going to start with the prices of the games, because $80 for Mario Kart is absurd. You can make the best video game on Earth. You can make Phantasy Star 5 or Shining the Holy Ark 2 HD edition, and you can make the best goddamn game on Earth, and I can guarantee you it is not worth $80. But then again, $80 is consistent with inflation. The issue here is actually stagnating wages, because wages had stagnated pretty much since the Switch 1 came out. So a lot of people can't afford the Switch 1, largely because everything is going up in price for one reason or another, but then the amount of money people are making isn't catching up to those prices. So that's really the huge crux of the issue. So a lot of people are being priced out of their hobby and they're upset about it, which I get. A lot of people are waiting on the Switch 2 to decrease in price, which good luck. And a lot of people are employing a wait and see sort of tactic with the Switch 2, which, I think is definitely going to blunt a lot of the early launch sales a little bit, but then again, the demand for the Switch 2 is high enough where I think it's going to be just fine. So there's that. Luckily, I had a lot of foresight and I saved up a shitload of money. I think I have over $900 in cash saved up for the Switch 2 just in case. And I think that's a little overboard, but then again, 46% tariffs aren't nothing to sneeze at, so I had to, prepare for the worst. Albeit the worst has largely subsided, but it's good to be cautiously optimistic, So I do intend on buying my Switch 2 on launch day. I'm not planning on pre-ordering it, so I'm not too upset that pre-orders are still halted for the time being. So I'm going to get mine on launch day, and I'm going to get a couple of games. Definitely going to get a Pro Controller, even though I technically don't need it. But again, I want to see how much better it is than the original Pro Controller, despite the price. And before you say that I'm reinforcing bad behavior, yes, I am indeed reinforcing Nintendo's bad behavior. But at the same time, my want for the Switch 2 is more than my need to teach Nintendo about the virtues of applied behavioral analysis. Nintendo can be ABA trained some other day, They can be, they can be ABA'd whenever they want, but I'm not a Devro staff. I'm not, some kind of special needs, wrangler of some kind, I'm not going to go out and teach a multi-billion-dollar corporation ABA just because I want something, So yes, I am not going to toe the line that a lot of Switch 2 haters want me to toe the line on. So there's that, which brings me to the whole discourse about it. The discourse about the Switch 2 is so awful that I hope it doesn't ruin my experience with the Switch 2, because the PS5 discourse ruined my appreciation for the system. In fact, it got to the point where anytime I would get interested in the PS5 again, I start playing the games, I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. So I do the autistic thing of researching it, and because there's no other places to research, I go on the internet. So I go onto the internet, research the PS5, looking for more information to stuff my autistic brain, and I come across the discourse, which is not the most positive thing on earth. And a lot of it says, oh, PS5 has no games. Oh, it's all live service bullshit. And it's all this negativity, this sort of lack of faith in the ninth console generation, just the ninth console generation as a whole. And a lot of people, they dog on the PS5 for being the worst examples of why the ninth console generation sucks. And in my opinion, I don't think the ninth console generation sucks at all. But you kind of have to hunt for the positives in it, You can't just, look at it at the broad strokes and say, yep, this is positive. You actually have to, get into the details and look for positives, which, a lot of people don't want to do. But my yum has been yucked, and my PS5 is now in the basement, in long-term storage, awaiting for removal from my collection, because the money I'm gonna sell the PS5 for is gonna be reinvested into my Rainamon fursuit, which, by the way, has nothing to do with Dr. Reina. I just want a cool fursuit, and that's gonna be a multi-year saving project. Hopefully it doesn't get absolutely screwed by tariffs, but what do I know, right? What do I know? So the discourse sucks, but then again, it's to be expected since the discourse has always suffered from the Twitterification of, discussion. You make a take and a bunch of people agree with you, but then somebody has to take the obligatory contrarian take, and it becomes this sort of us versus them mentality, and I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. It's already happening to the Switch 2 over the prices. And I get it. A lot of people are upset about the prices. A lot of people want to, do a lot of things. They say, oh, the Switch is going to fail. Oh, I'm not going to buy the Switch. Oh. And I'm like, if you hate Nintendo that much, let me give you guys a little bit of secret. The Japanese Diet, the Japanese Parliament, never signed the Good Friday Agreement, right? The Good Friday Agreement basically means that there's going to be peace in Northern Ireland, and more importantly, there's not going to be any more IRA activities. But because Japan didn't sign the Good Friday Agreements, technically the IRA can operate within Japanese territory and exist within Japanese territory. If you know where I'm going with this, then, let's just say this. What do you think is stronger? A cease and desist order from a Nintendo ninja lawyer or an Armalite? I know that's kind of a bad thing, but let's face it, all the people that are hating on Nintendo right now really want to do some Northern Irish trouble type shit on Nintendo right now. And I think that's ridiculous. That's a little overblown, If you don't want it, just don't buy it. And if enough people don't want it or don't buy it, then Nintendo's going to have to adjust their plans accordingly. They're going to have to learn that variable pricing is a bad way to interact with your consumers. And Nintendo's going to have to learn that just because they value their games very highly doesn't mean that the consumer has that same mutual idea about the value of their games. Just because you value them highly doesn't mean the consumer does also. But at the same time, the Switch 2 haters really are just annoying to deal with, Albeit I never get to see any of them on my videos, so I should be thankful. As for the Switch 2 Switch 2, defenders, a lot of them are a bunch of white knights that pretend that Nintendo's this kind of Chris Chan that they have to protect. They're on some Praetor Watchmen type shit. They're I don't know how to describe it, They think Nintendo's incapable of wrongdoing and that they're going to buy a Switch 2 and they're going to buy 1 million of them on day one to counteract the sales lost from the haters, which I get, but I'm going to be real with you. With a lot of people who take the contrarian, opinion, a lot of the people that are supporting Nintendo probably aren't going to buy a Switch 2. A lot of the most vocal people aren't going to buy Switch 2s or Switch 2 games or any type of Switch 2 paraphernalia. Let me tell you why. A lot of issues with woke people making comic books, a lot of people would defend those comic books, but they end up not buying them and they go broke, I'm not saying being woke is bad. I'm considered woke, but I'm just saying, just because somebody is going to defend you doesn't mean an automatic sale, Man, I shouldn't have used the word woke. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry. But anyway, getting back on track, the discourse fucking sucks, and I hate interacting with it by going into the comment section of Arlo and Scott Wozniak and Nintendo Forecast and all those other fucking talking heads. There's enough talking heads to, make a fucking talking heads record, So another thing I want to discuss is why I'm getting a Switch 2. Oh, you're so into retro shit. Why are you getting a Switch 2? One, it's because I want a next-gen console that's actually exciting. I love the PS5, but the PS5 isn't exciting. I bought that thing thinking that, this is going to be just like the Switch 1. Things are going to be so exciting, There's going to be all good news and new games. Oh, it's going to be fucking exciting. And then I bought it, and the next 2 years of my life was filled with, these nothing experiences, these nothing burger experiences. And I played a lot of these games, but they just don't hold my interest like my retro games do. I couldn't play, I couldn't beat most of these games. There are only a handful of games on PS5 that I've actually beat. And the rest, I would get a little bit into it, and I'm I'm not interested, man. So the lack of interest, the lack of real, any sort of meaningful experiences on it, Plus, the whole discourse on it fucking sucked, and interacting with the community fucking sucked. So, the PS5 is in storage for a very good reason. So, I'm excited for the Switch 2 because I want a new console that's going to be 100% exciting. Like, just like the Switch 1 was. And I also want to buy it because I want to replace my Switch 1, because a long time ago I got burnt out on it. Like, in that lull in my life between leaving Devro, the concentration camp they have in Rutland, Massachusetts for some reason, and me going into my group home and finding my first day program, my post group home day program, I spent a lot of time playing the Switch 1, man. Like, an unhealthy amount. Like, day in, day out, I was playing nothing but Switch 1. I'd go into the living room in my parents' house, and I'd play it for hours on end. And to switch it up, I would, like, set it up in my room, because me and my brother were sharing what is essentially an office space. And I'd plug it into, like, my brother's monitor and his speakers, back when he was in college. And I'd play the shit out of my Switch 1 doing that. And then I realized that I didn't like doing it because it made me feel like a fucking troglodyte. It made me feel like a caveman. And I decided to just continuously play it in the living room so I have a change of scenery. And shit got repetitive real fast. Like, this is some unhealthy type shit, But then again, this was the middle of the pandemic. This was, in the middle of a period of my life where nothing was happening except me waiting for shit to happen. And, it was just not a great time, not a great time. Then I moved into my group home thinking, oh, things are going to definitely change this time round. And they didn't. But then I got so burnt out on my Switch 1 that I decided, you know what? I think I love my retro consoles more. So I proceeded to spend the next couple of years spending money and time on my older consoles. And, it's to the point where I discovered, hey, I still love the PlayStation 2. I still love the Saturn that I inexplicably got from a friend. And I love the Dreamcast that I recently bought, even though there's no good racing games on it whatsoever. Maybe except for, like, Tokyo Extreme Racer and maybe Sega Rally 2. But, like, And then occasionally I'd boot up my Switch 1, just in case I felt a little nostalgic for it, Because I do miss the Switch 1, and I do miss the excitement, and I do miss the thrill of being a Switch fan right on the ground floor as things were happening from, like, 2017 to, like, 2019. It felt great to be a gamer during that time, And I kind of want some of that greatness back. And that's why I want the Switch 2, because I want it less for the games, even though the games are incredibly important, and I want it more for the emotional experience. Because that's what I want. I want a console that really grips me emotionally. That's what I want, right? Because I think life kind of sucks. Like, even though my living situation is such where I don't have to worry about anything, but it still, kind of sucks, I just want something thrilling. I want something exciting. I want something to give me, not so much a dopamine rush, but, like, I want something to make me feel something, And that's where the Switch 2 comes in, where I can finally be excited about modern games again. Like, I want to be excited about new shit. Not just excited that I got a hold of some old shit, I want something new, and I wanted something to just excite the shit out of me. So there's that. Another thing is, oh shit, maybe I did run out of things to say about the Switch 2. I'm excited for it. Hopefully I'm able to get a hold of one. I'm probably not going to make a video of me unboxing it because everybody else is going to be doing it. And besides, most of you come here for Toho shit and train shit anyway. Like, nobody gives a shit about me and my gaming content, right? So, yeah. Definitely going to make, probably a train video that day or something. I don't know. Anyway, Thank you for watching, even though this is kind of a crock of shit. Yeah, thanks. And please subscribe. Please. I lost 3 subscribers on a video I made, and I'd love for them to either come back or for them to be replaced by new subscribers. That would be great. Thank you.